loving his wife in a way he never had before. And so he had made a promise to cherish her, to take her on vacations, to make every moment they had left together unforgettable. That night, their camper van was parked in a quiet, secluded spot near the water. After a peaceful dinner, they returned to their cozy temporary home, snuggled up together in the tiny bed, and let sleep claim them. But before dawn, a nightmare twisted the fabric of reality into something unspeakable. Brian woke suddenly, his body rigid with terror. His breath was ragged, his pulse thundering in his ears. Something was wrong. He was not alone. His eyes darted through the darkness, adjusting to the murky blackness of the camper, and then he saw it. A shadowy figure loomed in the cramped space near the door, an intruder dressed in black, standing motionless, watching them. Brian's blood turned to ice. He could hear Christine's soft breathing beside him. She was unaware, still lost in sleep. Panic flooded his veins, but instinct took over. This was his wife, his world, and he would not let anything happen to her. The figure began to move, slinking toward the bed with sinister intent. Brian's heart pounded in his chest. He had to act now. With a guttural yell, Brian exploded out of bed, launching himself at the intruder. He wrapped his hands around their throat, fingers digging into flesh, his grip tightening with a force he never knew he possessed. The figure writhed and struggled, clawing at him, but Brian refused to let go. He could feel their desperate attempts to fight back, but he was stronger. This was life or death. He squeezed harder, his fury blinding him. And then, stillness. The body beneath him went limp. Brian panted, chest heaving, hands trembling. He had done it. He had saved Christine. But as his vision cleared, as his senses returned, a slow and creeping horror curled its way around his spine. The person beneath him was not an intruder. It was Christine. Brian stumbled back in disbelief, his hands covered in sweat, his fingers still tingling from the pressure they had applied to the delicate throat of the only woman he had ever loved. Christine lay there, unmoving, her beautiful face now pale and lifeless. Her lips parted as if she had tried to speak, to call out to him, to beg for him to stop. A scream tore through the silence, but it did not come from Christine. It came from Brian. The police arrived minutes later, alerted by a frantic, breathless phone call from Brian himself. They found him outside the camper, hyperventilating, his eyes wild with terror and grief. The officers tried to speak to him, to understand what had happened, but he could barely form words. It was as if his mind refused to process the nightmare that had become his reality. Inside the camper, the gruesome scene awaited them. Christine, lifeless, sprawled on the bed. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of an intruder, only Brian's trembling hands and the unshakable truth that had begun to settle upon him like a suffocating weight. He had killed his wife. The truth came out in the days that followed. Brian Thomas had suffered from somnambulism, a rare and severe form of sleepwalking. At home, they had always slept in separate beds because of it. He had no control over his actions once he slipped into the abyss of sleep. And on that fateful night, his worst nightmare had taken shape in the real world. In his mind, he had been fighting to save Christine. In reality, he had been the monster from which she needed saving. Racked with guilt, Brian did not fight his arrest. He confessed everything, his voice raw, his eyes hollow. He had no defense, no excuse. He wanted to be punished. He needed to be punished. But the world had other plans. In November 2009, the judge overseeing Brian's case made a startling decision. He saw no malice, no intent, no true crime in what had happened. He saw only a broken man who had lost everything. The weight of guilt would be his lifelong sentence, and in the judge's eyes, that was punishment enough. Brian Thomas walked free, but his soul remained imprisoned. For the rest of his life, he would carry the unbearable burden of knowing that the woman he loved, the woman he had sworn to protect, had died at his hands. And the most haunting part, it all happened while he was fast asleep.